These are the most isolated military outposts in Warhammer 40,000. Number 6, Watch Station Arcaz. If you're going to spend your military career waiting for something to happen, at least make sure someone knows where you are. Watch Station Arcaz is a Deathwatch void station shaped like a spiked iron ring, drifting inside the gas clouds at the outer edge of the Arcaz system. The Deathwatch runs dozens of these across the galaxy. Forward observation point, weapons cache, small command node, all packed into a single armored shelf floating in the dark between star systems. The Deathwatch rotates veteran space marines through these stations to watch for alien activity. The long vigil they call the whole operation. Not a campaign, not a war. A watch with no scheduled end date, which is a polite way of saying nobody has planned for it to be over. Arcaz sits inside a gas cloud, far enough from Imperial core territory that resupply is, by institutional standards, irregular. The crew runs maintenance, watches sensor returns, and sends periodic reports into the void, hoping those reports reach someone before whatever the reports describe has already resolved itself. The station was built to track alien movement at the edge of monitored space. In practice, it is a post so remote that even its own organization describes reinforcement capacity as rapid response, meaning faster than nothing, and nothing was genuinely the other option. Headquarters thinks about ARC has twice a year when the sensor reports come in. The rest of the time, the station watches alone. Number 5, the pylon garrisons of Cadia. Cadia guarded the only stable passage out of the Eye of Terror. Billions of soldiers, continent-sized fortress networks, an entire world built around a single military purpose. It was one of the most fortified positions in the Imperium, which is saying something in a setting where fortification is basically a hobby. But Cadia did not hold the gate alone. Spread across the surrounding system were garrison troops whose entire purpose was to hold secondary positions near the pylons. These ancient Blackstone structures were thought to stabilize the navigational conditions around the gate. The logic was straightforward. Lose the pylons, the gate gets unreliable. Lose the gate, and what comes through is no longer a managed incursion, but something nobody had a good plan for. So soldiers sat in hardened bunkers, near structures they did not understand, on ground considered strategically critical, doing a job that was almost entirely passive. They did not operate the pylons. They did not interact with them in any operational sense. They just made sure nothing removed them. When the 13th Black Crusade hit and Cadia fell, those garrisons did not get evacuation orders in time. Every supply route ran through Cadia itself. When Cadia's orbital infrastructure collapsed, those routes collapsed with it, and troops who had filed their reports and held their posts found themselves cut off not by encirclement, but because the planet at the center of their logistics chain had been destroyed. Cadia's defenders did not surrender. The planet gave out first. The pylon garrisons never got to make that kind of ending. They just stopped receiving replies. Number 4, the garrisons of the Imperium Nihilus. All of them. When the Great Rift opened after Cadia's fall, it cut the Imperium in half. The Cicatrix Maledictum, a galaxy-wide warp rift tearing through real space, made transit across the divide unreliable at best. The half left stranded on the far side became the Imperium Nihilus. Thousands of worlds that had been functioning parts of a larger structure suddenly received nothing. No supply ships, no replacement personnel, no updated orders, no confirmation that their distress signals were reaching anyone at all. Garrison commanders had to make decisions with information already months or years out of date. Ships attempting to cross the rift came out having experienced completely different amounts of time than expected, sometimes arriving after the situation they were sent to address had already concluded, occasionally arriving before the orders dispatching them had been written. That second one is a real problem for chain of command paperwork. The result was hundreds of isolated worlds whose commanders decided entirely on their own authority whether to hold position, fall back, or attempt contact, with no assurance that anyone capable of confirming or overruling the decision would ever receive it. Some held for years on plans overtaken by events they had no way of knowing about. Others quietly formed defensive coalitions with neighboring systems, technically without authority to do so, because the alternative was watching everything come apart. The Administratum's records from this period contain thousands of entries reading, last confirmed contact, then a date, then nothing. Not destroyed, not evacuated, filed and sitting in a review queue assigned to an officer who may themselves have an entry in a later file. Number 3, Vigilus. Watch Station Arcas is isolated the way a single sentry in an empty field is isolated. Vigilus is isolated the way the last bridge over a collapsed gorge is isolated. The sentry has silence. The bridge has everyone fighting over it at once. After the rift formed, one stable passage through it was confirmed. The Nachman Gauntlet, narrow enough to function as a single road through otherwise impassable terrain. At the far end sat Vigilus, a hive world that had previously been a useful stop on a transit route and was now the only reliable connection between the two halves of a fractured civilization. Before the rift, unremarkable. After it, a problem with no good solutions. Vigilus isolation is not quiet. When the War of Beasts began, the planet faced simultaneous orc invasions landing from orbit, Genestealer cult uprisings from inside the civilian population, and Chaos Warband incursions pressing through the gauntlet. Not sequentially. At the same time, all of them, with defensive forces already spread thin across a planet-sized urban sprawl divided into multiple hive cities, each functioning as its own separate command headache. Resupply was not straightforward either, because every ship transiting the gauntlet was a target. Convoys to Vigilus were military operations in their own right. Relief did not simply arrive. It fought its way in, and often arrived late, reduced, or not at all. Vigilus held a position. It held that position while the position was simultaneously under attack from 3 directions, and the supply line was treated as a legitimate military target. Number 2, the Crimson Fists at Rhine's World. The Crimson Fists are a Space Marine chapter. 1,000 genetically engineered soldiers, centuries of training, one of the older surviving chapters in the Imperium. When Snagrod arrived at Rhine's World, it came as a full invasion, hundreds of thousands of orcs making planetfall across a world that had not faced anything on that scale in anyone's operational memory. Before a coordinated response could form, a misfired missile from the chapter's own defense batteries hit Arx Tyrannus, the fortress monastery. The detonation destroyed the building and killed most of the Crimson Fists in a single event. Cantor was left with fewer than 400 Space Marines on a world being overrun. The isolation was not geographical. Neighboring Imperial systems existed. It was operational. 400 soldiers against hundreds of thousands of orcs, a planetary defense force, already in pieces, no reliable communication out, and no certainty that help could arrive before there was nothing left to help. Cantor's survivors did not pick a position and hold it. Against those numbers, picking a single position was choosing where to be buried. They moved, dispersed across the planet, linked up with surviving PDF units wherever they could find them, and ran a guerrilla campaign across their own homeworld for months. No reliable resupply, no confirmed timeline for relief, just the calculation that they had not run out of options yet. They did not know Gilliman would eventually lead the relief. They fought without that information, which means they fought without the thing that would have made it easier to keep going. Number 1, every relay station that never record. Not a location. A category. The Imperium covers 1 million worlds. Military doctrine pushes early warning stations and border monitors to the edges of surveyed space and past them. These posts are small. 12 crew, sometimes fewer, transmitting on schedule, waiting for acknowledgement, continuing to function on the assumption that the transmissions are reaching someone. The Administratum does not track these installations carefully. It tracks supply runs. When supply runs stop receiving responses, a line gets updated. The entry is flagged, sent to an oversight department, assigned a review date tied to an officer who may retire or be reassigned before the date arrives. After the rift, these entries multiplied faster than the relevant departments could process them. Review dates passed, Some of the assigned officers are now entries themselves in different files under similar headings. There is no single most isolated outpost in Warhammer 40,000. The scale is too large, the bureaucracy too slow, the threats coming from too many directions simultaneously. What exists is a pattern. A soldier at a post, sending a report on schedule, waiting, hearing nothing, sending the next one. Not because the reply came, because the schedule says to. That is the list. 6 versions of what isolation looks like when distance is measured in star systems and reinforcement means sometime this decade if the route holds. The scariest thing in the far future is not always what is outside the outpost walls. Sometimes it is the growing suspicion that no one has opened your last 47 transmissions and the possibility that whoever was supposed to open them stopped being in a position to do so some time ago.